In the city of Lagos, where generators roar all night and pepper soup fills the evening air, there lived a young woman named Addis. She was not loud. She was not the kind of girl who entered a room and made everyone look. But she was good, deeply, quietly good, the kind of good that older women noticed and younger women forgot to respect. Addis worked at a small tailoring shop on Baligan Street, hemming dresses and sewing buttons. She did not earn much, but she laughed easily and gave freely. Her mother always said, "My daughter, goodness is a crown that only God can see." Addis believed her. But the neighborhood had other opinions. Those opinions were about to meet a poor farmer named Emeka, and nobody in Lagos that year was prepared for what would follow. Emeka arrived in Lagos on a Wednesday from Anambra, carrying a small bag and wearing slippers that had seen too many dusty roads. He moved into one room in Ajigona, where hope lived tightly squeezed between corrugated iron roofs and loud music. He farmed a small plot back in the village and sold vegetables at Ojota Market on weekends. The women on the street shook their heads. This one? Farmer boy. Nothing inside, nothing outside. His neighbor Mama Chisholm told her friends every evening, "That boy is wasting Lagos air." But Emeka did not seem to hear them. He simply smiled and returned to his tomatoes. He was the kind of man whose peace irritated people who had none. And the street, without knowing it, had already made the biggest mistake of its life. Addis first saw Emeka at the Ojota Market on a Saturday morning. He was arranging his tomatoes carefully, wiping each one with a small cloth, singing softly to himself. She stopped at his table to buy tomatoes for her mother's too. He told her the price and she bought 2 baskets. As she lifted them, he said quietly, "Be careful. The one on the left is heavier." She looked at him, surprised he had noticed. Most market men were already calling the next customer. She said thank you and walked away. But something stayed with her, not his face, not his worn slippers, but the way he had paid attention. In Lagos, people rarely notice small things. She thought about it all the way home. Her mother asked why she was smiling. Addis said, "Nothing, Mama." But it was not nothing. By the 3rd Saturday, Addis was stopping at Emeka's table on purpose. They talked while she chose tomatoes. He told her about his farm, the smell of early morning soil, the way yam vines climbed like they were reaching for heaven. She told him about her tailoring, how every finished dress felt like a small prayer answered. They did not know they were falling into each other. They only knew that Saturdays felt different now. One evening, Emeka walked Addis home from the market. Her neighbor Chidinma watched from her balcony with a raised eyebrow. "Addis. That one no farmer oh. What are you doing?" Addis laughed it off. But Chidinma called 3 other women over and they all stood watching like a panel of judges. Emeka did not look up. That calmness made Chidinma more suspicious than anything else. Word spread fast, the way only neighborhood gossip can. Everyone soon knew that Addis was spending time with the poor tomato farmer from Ajigona. Her friends arrived at her shop, Ngozi, Blessing, and Titi, dressed like they had come for a serious meeting. "Addis, are you mad?" Ngozi said without sitting down. "That man doesn't even have a car." Blessing added, "My brother earns more in 1 week than he earns all year." Titi said quietly, "You are too fine for this kind of story." Addis sewed quietly while they talked. When they finished, she looked up and said, "He is kind." They all burst out laughing. Ngozi slapped the table. "Kindness will not pay your light bill, my sister. Kindness will not buy your osoebi." Addis smiled and said nothing more. But she had already decided. There was one man who had tried many times to marry Addis. His name was Chief Nonso, not a real chief, just a man with money who had bought the title for himself. He wore agboda on Tuesdays for no reason and drove a black jeep with tinted windows. He had sent his cousin to Addis' mother twice with drinks and a small envelope. Both times she refused. When Chief Nonso heard about the farmer, he drove past Emeka's market stall, rolled down his window, and said loudly, "So this is the competition." Huh! He drove away laughing. Emeka kept arranging his tomatoes. But the market women whispered to one another, "That farmer is a dead man walking and he doesn't even know it." Emeka knew. He simply had no fear of it. Emeka came to see Adi's mother on a Sunday. He wore his cleanest shirt and brought garden eggs and groundnut oil from his farm. Mama Adi sat him down and looked at him for a long time without speaking. "What do you have?" she asked plainly. "Mama," he said, "I have land in the village, I have 2 hands, and I have a heart your daughter deserves." She asked more questions. He answered all of them without rushing or pretending. When he left that evening, Mama Adiz went quiet for a long time. Adiz watched her mother's face, trying to read it. Finally Mama said slowly, "That man is hiding something." Adiz frowned. "Hiding what?" The old woman shook her head. "I don't know yet. But it is not bad." And that was all she said. The day Adiz told her friends she was marrying Emeka, the tailoring shop went silent for 5 full seconds, which in Lagos is almost miraculous. Then everyone spoke at once. Ngozi knocked over her drink. Blessing grabbed Adiz's arm like stopping her from walking into traffic. "He has nothing," Ngozi said. "He lives in 1 room. Your mother allowed this." Adiz said her mother had not stopped it. Ngozi left the shop saying she would not attend the wedding. Blessing said she would attend but would be praying throughout. Titi sat back down, looked at Adiz, and whispered, "I hope you know what you are doing." Adiz said calmly, "I know exactly what I am doing." Nobody believed her. But she had never been more certain of anything in her life. The wedding was small, held in a church on a Saturday, about 30 people, most of them relatives from Anambra arriving in 2 buses. Adiz's friends came, but Ngozi sat in the back and frowned the entire time. Chief Nonso drove past the church 3 times in his black jeep but never stopped. During the pastor's prayer, something unusual happened. An old man in the 3rd row began to weep. Nobody knew him. He was not from either family. When the prayer ended, he quietly slipped out before anyone could ask who he was. 3 people saw him leave. They all described him the same way: white agbada, a walking stick of dark wood, and a smile that looked like it held a secret the size of a river. In the first month of marriage they lived in Emeka's 1-room apartment in Ajigona. Adiz was not ashamed. She arranged that room like a palace, curtains she sewed herself, a small rug, a framed Bible verse above the bed. The neighbors waited for her to break. They expected complaints and regret. Instead they heard laughter. Emeka cooked jollof rice on Sundays and brought Adiz morning tea before she woke. Adiz pressed his shirt and packed his market bag every Saturday. Chidinma watched from her balcony and shook her head. "Nobody that poor is this happy," she told Mama Chisholm. "Don't worry," Mama Chisholm replied. "The happiness will finish when hunger enters." But hunger did not enter the way they expected. Something else arrived instead. Something none of them had any word for. 6 weeks after the wedding, Emeka received a letter. It was delivered by a man in a company uniform who arrived in a Toyota Camry and asked 3 neighbors before finding the right house. The letter was from a law firm in Victoria Island. Adiz watched Emeka open it at the kitchen table. He read it twice, then placed it flat and did not speak for 1 full minute. "Emeka," she said. "What is it?" He looked up, eyes wet. "My grandfather, the one who died before I was born. He owned land." Adiz leaned forward. "What kind of land?" Emeka swallowed. 17 plots, he said quietly. "In Lekki." Adiz did not move. In Lagos, that word alone meant a different life. 17 plots in Lekki was not money. It was a kingdom. Waiting in Emeka's name. The law firm explained everything. Emeka's grandfather, Chief Obiora, had been a quiet land merchant in the 1970s who purchased large portions of Lekki before the city grew toward it. He died leaving one son, Emeka's father, who moved to Anambra and told no one, ashamed of his father's patient, unsung wealth. Emeka's father died when Emeka was 4, leaving no will and no letter. The land sat in legal suspense for over 20 years until the law firm, clearing an estate case, found the original deeds and traced the last living heir. That heir was Emeka, the tomato farmer in one slippers, the man every girl in Lagos had laughed at. Adi sat across from the lawyer in a glass Victoria Island office, hands folded in her lap, and thought about the old man who wept at their wedding. They did not tell anyone immediately. Emeka insisted. Let us understand it first before we make noise. Adis agreed. For 2 more weeks they lived exactly as before. Emeka went to market. Adis sewed at Balogun. But now there were Tuesday meetings with lawyers and documents to sign. In those weeks, Adis watched her husband closely, looking for money to change the shape of him. It did not. He still brought her tea. He still sang while cooking. He still argued kindly with the pepper seller and then bought extra just to be generous. One night she said, "You already knew, didn't you? That you were not small." He was quiet, then said, "My mother always told me, a man who knows who he is cannot be made small by anyone." Adis closed her eyes and understood everything. The first person to find out was Mama Chisholm, who had her ear permanently pressed to the walls of the neighborhood. She saw the lawyers arrive a second time and followed one to his car. "Is everything all right with our neighbor?" she asked casually. The young lawyer, new to the job, said without thinking, "More than all right, more." That night Mama Chisholm gathered women on the balcony with her report. None of them could imagine what was coming. Chief Nonso heard through his own channels. A cousin near the law firm whispered the name on the land documents. When the cousin told him, Chief Nonso went very quiet. He sat in his parlor in his agboda and did not speak all evening. His boys said they had never seen him look like that. Like a man who had miscounted something important. On a Thursday, 6 months after the wedding, Emeka and Adis moved. No announcement. The truck came quietly in the morning. But in Lagos there is no quiet moving. By 8 a.m. the whole street was outside watching. Movers carried boxes. Adis' curtains came down. The rug was rolled up. Neighbors stood in silence louder than any noise. Chidinma gripped her balcony rail. Mama Chisholm stood below with her hands on her head. One woman asked a mover, "Where are they going?" He said simply, "Lekki Phase 1." Someone gasped. A woman near the gate repeated it like the words were too heavy, "Lekki Phase 1." Adis stepped out last, wearing a simple blue dress, looking exactly the same as always. But the way she walked told everyone she had known all along. She said goodbye to no one and got into the car. The house in Lekki was a 3-bedroom home in a quiet estate, green lawn, tiled kitchen, a gate with a guard. On their first morning, Adis made tea and brought it to Emeka on the veranda. They sat together as early Lagos moved around them, birds, distant engines, wet grass. "Are you happy?" he asked. She looked at him. "I was already happy," she said. "This is just extra." He laughed the way a man laughs when he has carried a secret a long time, with relief and joy mixing together. He told her then that he had suspected the land existed. His mother had mentioned it once before she died. He had prayed about it but never spoken of it, not wanting to build hope on maybe. Adis took his hand and held it. Back in Ajigonal, the news became a full story with many versions, the way Lagos stories always travel. Some said Emeka had won a lottery. Others said it was an oil deal. One version said Adis herself had hidden money. Nobody wanted to say the simplest version, that the poor farmer inherited from a grandfather he never met, and every person who laughed had done so while standing near a fortune. Ngozi called Addis on a Monday and cleared her throat 3 times before speaking. Addis. I just heard. Congratulations. Addis thanked her warmly, without coldness or triumph. Ngozi was confused by the warmth. She had prepared herself for a lecture. Instead, Addis said, "Come and visit soon." Ngozi hung up and sat quietly, feeling something she had no name for, the discomfort of being forgiven before she had fully apologized. Emeka did not leave farming. He took 2 of the 17 plots and partnered with an agricultural company to develop a large vegetable farm at the Lekki mainland border. Within 8 months he was supplying 4 supermarkets with fresh produce. He hired 12 workers, young men from Ajiganou who needed honest income, and trained them himself, walking the rows with them every morning the way his own father once walked rows with him. On Saturdays he still visited Ojota market, not to sell but to check prices and greet the traders. His old market table was gone, but the woman who had sold beside him was still there. He left her a brown envelope every month, anonymously. She never knew where it came from. She told her children God was faithful. She was not wrong. Chief Nonso drove past the Lekki estate twice. A security guard noticed and told the neighbors. The second time he slowed and stopped outside the gate for 3-4 minutes before driving away. He never knocked. He never called. Pride is a heavy thing to carry, and Nonso had been carrying it so long he had forgotten it was there. His jeep still shone, his agbada still fit, but something behind his eyes had gone flat. One evening his cousin said carefully, "Chief, you judged too fast." Nonso said nothing. He poured a drink and stared out the window. In the street below, a young woman was laughing at her phone. He watched her and thought, without meaning to, about Addis' quiet smile, the one that had never needed an audience. Emeka built his mother a proper house in Anambra, 3 bedrooms, a veranda, and a water borehole in the compound. The village people came out to watch the foundation being poured. Some were the same people who had whispered after Emeka's father died and left the family with nothing. They came with warm smiles now. The oldest elder, Motsi Okafor, sat in the shade and said to the air, "This boy's grandfather planted a tree before he died. The boy watered it without knowing. The tree has spoken." Nobody asked what he meant. In the village, some things are said for the ears of the sky, not the ears of people. Emeka's mother stood at her new kitchen door and wept, not from sadness, but from the joy of a mother whose prayers arrived later than expected and louder than she imagined. Addis did not close her tailoring shop. She expanded it, moved from Baligen to a proper space in Suralere, registered it as a business, and took on 3 apprentices. Young women who came from the kind of nothing she remembered. She paid them salaries, not just stipends. She designed her own Ankara clothing line. By the end of the first year, her work was worn at 3 Owambi parties in Victoria Island. At one party, a fashion blogger photographed it and posted it online. Orders arrived. Her name began to travel. Her friends Ngozi and Blessing cheered at the shop opening. Addis watched them cheer and felt no bitterness. Only deep, lasting satisfaction, the quiet kind that belongs to people who never stopped working while others were busy laughing. Titi, the quiet friend who had whispered, "I hope you know what you are doing," came alone to the Lekki house one afternoon. She looked around slowly. Beautiful but not showy. Comfortable, not cold. Farm boots by the back door. Fabric samples on the table. A half-written grocery list on the kitchen counter. A home built by 2 people who actually liked each other. After a long silence, Titi said, "I am sorry I doubted you." Addis poured her a drink and said, "You were worried for me." "That is not a sin." Titi asked, "How did you know he was the one?" Addis thought, then said, "He noticed the heavy basket." A man who pays attention to small things will not miss the important ones. Titi drove home that evening thinking about every man she had chosen for his car. A year after they moved to Lekki, a national magazine ran a small feature on Emeka's agricultural business, half a page with a photograph. Emeka standing in his farm, dressed simply, smiling at the camera like a man who had nothing to prove and everything to be grateful for. The caption read, "From market table to major supplier, how one man turned inherited land into living opportunity." The people from Ajigana bought 5 copies of that magazine. Mama Chisholm framed hers and told everyone she had always known he was special. Nobody reminded her what she had actually said on that balcony. Chidinma posted the photo online with the words, "Our neighbor made it big. God is good." Emeka saw the post, laughed quietly, and said nothing. Some silences are worth more than any response. On the evening of their 2nd anniversary, Emeka took Adis to a quiet restaurant by the Lagos Lagoon. No crowd, no noise, just the two of them and the city lights on the water. He gave her a small box. Inside was a gold bracelet with her name engraved inside. On the outer face, in small letters, "You saw me." She held it without speaking. "Before the land, before the lawyers, before everything," he said, "you saw me and you chose me." She put the bracelet on and looked at the water. Somewhere across that lagoon, Ajigana was going on with its generators and noise. Somewhere, his mother slept in her new house. She leaned into him. "I would choose you again," she said. "Every Saturday. Every tomato basket." He held her and said nothing. Nothing needed to be said. And so, dear one, this is what the street of Ajigana never truly understood. It was not the land that made Emeka. The land was only the answer to a question God had been writing since before he was born. What made Emeka was the man he chose to be when he had nothing, calm when mocked, patient when forgotten, faithful when no one was watching. And Adis, it was not luck that gave her this life. It was a choice made in a crowded market on a Saturday morning to see a person where others saw only a price tag. In Lagos, people will always measure a man by what is in his pocket. But destiny has never been interested in pockets. It is interested in character. Somewhere at Ojota right now, another quiet man is arranging his tomatoes, singing to himself. Are you paying attention? You never know what name he carries.